Have you heard the advice, write every day?
I have heard that advice, and I do think it's really great advice because I believe when you hear writers of great stature saying that they write every single day. I believe Paul Thomas Anderson says that he writes every day, every morning. He needs to wake up really early, and that's kind of his time, because I think he's got 5 or 6 kids or something, and so he'll write every day. And I think Aaron Sorkin might be another writer that says that they write every single day. And I believe what they're really saying there is, and I believe this as well, is that you lose the momentum. Because it's hard. It's hard. The hardest part of any creative endeavor that you're sitting at a computer, whether you're writing a screenplay or making a video game or any kind of element out there, is actually keeping your butt in the seat. And so if you get a habit of writing every single day, then generally you'll write through writer's block or write through this concept of thinking that it's not going to be good enough. Because really the most important element of writing every day is just getting a thing out there. Because once you have a rough draft, it's so much simpler to go back and craft it and, tweak it in particular ways. On a personal level, I think that people should handwrite their first draft. One, we lose our handwritten ability. And I do all this, I write so much longhand. And but another side of this is, I think if you handwrite your entire first draft of a screenplay, then you have to write a second draft when you type it. But I have a whole style of writing where I'll do a paradigm, the note cards, and then go into a handwritten draft, and then go into a typing draft. And then generally speaking, it kind of gets you through that. But with that said, it's hard for people to get momentum. If you go from this desire of, I wish I could write, and then you sit down for the first time to write and nothing comes out, well, of course, you have to work up the brain. You have to write every day. There has to be kind of a momentum building. And at some point, I can't remember what the number is exactly, but it's like if you do something 18 times or some particular number, it becomes a habit. So if you can sustain something doing it 18 days in a row, you'll feel weird to not do it. And they say that a lot about working out or those kind of habits, that eventually once you've gone so deep into it, you really don't want to stop doing it. So I think that's the big thing of writing every day, even if it's a couple sentences. I believe Stephen King also writes every day. I think that Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, writes every day, I believe. There's definitely a momentum. Something that Stephen King did with his kids, which it makes me so upset because I wish I could have had this in my childhood. They had a typewriter, and Stephen King and his wife, which I cannot remember her name right now, but she's a great novelist as well, they would write a sentence in that typewriter, and then throughout the week, Stephen King has a couple sons, they would all add sentences to it. And by the end of the week, they'd have a story.
Tabitha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
And then so that was a game they played all through their childhood. Which, I mean, come on, that's how you breed novelists.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. No. Now I'm jealous too. That's really neat. I wish I'd done that as well.
Yeah.
But you say you write to-do lists.
Yeah.
Do you handwrite those?
Oh yeah.
And at what point in the day are you doing as you wake up, or maybe you have a coffee, tea first, and then you do it?
Now that I have a nightly bubble bath, there's a moment where I'll put on meditation music and lay in the bath, and my mind will just kind of trail. Like, I'm making a picture devoted in time right now, and in that film, I'm asking a lot of interview questions, and I'll come up with a lot of those questions while just trying not to even think about anything. They'll just start hitting me, and also my to-do list will come out that way as well. They'll just kind of. And I got in this routine of putting a to-do list together because it's so easy to forget things. You go into something with 8 objectives and you'll always forget the 8th or the 7th one. And if you write it all down, you never forget. They're all there. So yeah, and I'll write them in the morning if they're not written the night before, but I usually always write them the night before.
And do you find that not writing them on your phone helps you stay more present? Because I find I write grocery lists on a piece of scrap paper. Mm-hmm. I don't want my phone because it's going to distract me. And so when I go into a busy LA grocery store, now I just have this one thing to focus on. and it helps?
You know, the only time I write anything on my phone is if I'm in that bubble bath and I have an idea. I'll write it into like a texting chat where I don't send it, but I just like will jot them down that way because there's no paper next to the bathtub. And then later I'll handwrite them. And I also handwrite all my questions and all kinds of things. But one element to that is if you write stuff in your phone, like a lot of people have their calendars in their phone and stuff like that, all great technology. I am not anti-technology at all, but I love a hard calendar on the wall, and I love having those hard lists because I see it. And when I see that colorful piece of paper and see that, it reminds me immediately. If my phone is closed, also too, your phone gets you addicted to opening apps. It's just inevitable. I keep all the data off on all my apps on my phone. So if I'm not in Wi-Fi, I can't even open Instagram or other things. And that really helped me stop opening those apps every time you open your phone. So if you're like already have the habit that when you open your phone, you open Instagram or Facebook and your texting app, then you might forget to even open your to-do list. So, but say it's like a Post-it note on the back side of your phone, then you're always seeing it. Yeah, so I'll put them on my phone or on my wallet, or I have a very particular book that I carry with me. I'm always writing things longhand in my book. Yeah, so it's incredibly important, I think, to write things, for me on a personal level, write things longhand than putting them in a phone. There's apps for everything, and I think sometimes a lot of ideas get lost that way.
So in terms of writing every day, what about filming every day? Do you think there's the same urgency to keep sort of your eye behind the lens, or maybe not as much as writing?
Well, for me, the urgency comes from being attached to a creative wave. So given the fact that I'm producing, directing, writing, editing, shooting, doing sound design, I love sound design and mixing sounds and stuff on material. It's really being attached to that creative wave, because for me on a personal level, I couldn't be a novelist. And the reason is, if I sit down to write a screenplay, by the time I'm finished writing, I want to be around people so badly. And then I go out and start making the film. And then when I'm around people for the shoot, by the end of the shoot, I'm like, get me alone, you know? And then you get into the editing room, and then you're with your editor. And by the time you're done with that process, you want to be around people again, show the picture, and then the whole thing starts back over. So for me, it's not so much important to be writing every day as it is to be on that creative wave consistently and sustaining that. Because, you know, it's the little pieces, the little bites. I hate to say bites out of the apple because it makes me think of the Garden of Eden, and that was a negative thing to eat the apple. But truly, you are taking bites out of an apple every day. And just, it's like if you do a little bit every single day, it's why I have that post on my computer that says never have a 0% day, because as long as you do 1% of work today, in a year, if you keep doing that, you'll probably have done more work than a lot of people end up achieving, because it's so easy to not do anything for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it just gets, you know, especially because we have Netflix and so much possible entertainment that's sitting there. As a filmmaker, I love and I don't love Netflix. There's like a side of it where I'm afraid to put stuff on platforms where your stuff gets buried. And it's so consistent, just so much out there. But also I feel like filmmakers, you shouldn't be even thinking about that side of it. Because again, just be caught up in the creative wave, make as much as you can, put it out in the world, and let everything else work itself out.
What happens when that wave, you don't catch it?
Well, fortunately for myself, there hasn't been a moment I don't catch the wave. I think it's because I came from such a difficult childhood that once that moment came where I decided to devote myself towards filmmaking, I had a purpose. And before that, I was skateboarding, and I would go outside for 8 to 10 hours and just kill myself to try to figure out new skateboarding tricks. And that transitioned over to filmmaking. So I've made so many films at this point in my life because I've consistently not gotten off that wave. And I do think that it's like working out. If you do push-ups every day, eventually you can do 100 push-ups a day. But so like the idea of getting ideas, if you're open to it and keep on pushing that flow forward, eventually they'll keep coming faster and faster and faster. I think there's so much in the universe that we don't comprehend. Like for instance, dark matter. There was a moment that we didn't think it existed, and now we know that it exists. And I think that there could be a possibility that our energy can interact with that dark matter and bring things to us. But I think the ability to bring things to yourself comes from how clear your antenna is. And that's being sober. That's, not just being sober from drugs or alcohol, but being sober from negativity. It's really keeping your head clear and on the right track. And I think that's when things just start to accumulate and pop up.
Right, that's a great point. And also, too, the images online, it's easy to get caught up, whether it's social media, the news feed.
Tony Robbins said something the other day that I saw, and he told a gentleman to look around a room and then close your eye, or look around the room and look at everything that's green. And the guy closed his eyes and he said, "Do you see all the green items?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Can you think of the items that are red?" And he's like, "No." And he said, "Okay, open your eyes. Now look around the room and look for all the items that are red." And he closed his eyes and he asked him a similar question. And the point is that we look for what we're looking for. So if you're looking for negativity, if you're hyper-focused on the negative, you're going to find it everywhere. If you train yourself to be focused on positivity, you will find it all over the place. There is always a way to spiral things into a positive route, even more so than negative. But I think our society's kind of built towards people being in a negative headspace. And it might just be that there's this sexy notion of violence and all kinds, sex and violence and how that's intertwined in entertainment. Maybe there's just this kind of spiral towards negativity, but I feel like if you can train yourself to the positive side of life, then you'll find that wherever you look, and it'll, give you a clearer mind, I think.
Yeah, and I think also, too, there's a popularity in cynicism. So sometimes if you're too Pollyanna, in my case, or whatever, and not that I've always been that, but then you're going to be made fun of, because if you're in more of a heady environment where there's more of these realists, whatever, or, working in certain corporations or law firm or whatever, there's a cynicism there. So it doesn't fit in to be upbeat and cheery, because the stuff that's coming to you through that job is usually someone's got a problem and they need it solved. So, I think that cynicism, is sort of popular.
It might be popular because of what we're built on. If you think about mankind over the course of history, it's all war. It's taking over land, the poor and the rich. That's always been the way it's been. And so that's such a pessimistic way of life where, I don't have answers for where we are, but it's very obvious that if we all lived in a very positive manner, then there would be a possibility that we'd be more positive. Where does negativity come from in today's world? Usually, to a large degree, if somebody's feeling down, it's probably because subconsciously they feel like someone else has something that they would like to have. But really, if they knew the person that had the thing that they wish they had, they'd realize that that person actually wishes they had this other thing. And that there's this whole circular nature to us feeling like we wish we had more and not feeling. And that's where Buddhists, I believe, and I'm not incredibly well read in Buddhism, but I believe a large part of that is feeling content in who you are in the exact moment you're living and trying not to desire so many other things outside of what you're sitting with.
And that's difficult, especially when you pick up the phone. You're going to be bombarded with images that
yeah. And also, too, we all have family and friends, and everyone has pessimistic family and friends. I think it's incredibly important to not push yourself into the arena of trying to help people change. Only focus on yourself. You cannot allow yourself to be too focused on I wish my aunt would be this way or see that, or my uncle or my father or my mother or my brother. It's got to be focus on yourself, get your head in the right space, and that's all that matters. You know, and let people live the way they want to live.
Let me just play the devil's advocate though. What
Okay.
if someone says, PM, that's being a dreamer.
Yeah.
Money talks, and we all have to pay bills.
Yeah.
We need to look at reality.
There's a large part that reality is what you choose it to be. And if you allow the reality that you live within to be chosen by someone else, then you'll never feel happy. For instance, you're a child, so you kind of live within your parents' reality, whatever that reality is. When you become an adult, a lot of times we're not taught to realize that now we're formulating our own reality. And part of formulating your own reality is not necessarily to see a therapist, but to comprehend that we all need work. I need work right now. There is no person who would not be in a place of needing to be in a better position emotionally. So I do think that it's easy to write off an idea that you can spin everything into an optimistic manner, but it's not easy to write off that does make you feel better. It feels better to not focus on the negative. And I do want to say it's incredibly important to understand that this is a daily challenge that I put myself through. It's not like I wake up and I'm like, everything's great. And it's like you wake up and you're like, okay, how can I get back centered right now? How can I get back to this moment? And then your mind spirals out and you got to focus on bringing it back and getting back to the place. And filmmaking helps balance me. And this new filmmaking where I'm taking documentary and narrative and marrying the two genres, there's a side of that notion where doing interviews and certain things help me get into a meditative place where I have to be centered. Because a lot of times when you're interviewing someone, you're forcing yourself to stay quiet and trying to stay in the moment and be there. And I feel like that's something I love so much about these new movies is being in that moment and just having to listen. And it helps clear your mind when you really live in the moment with somebody. And we don't do it very often. Outside of interviewing somebody, how often do you really just sit and listen, even to the people that we love? We're always our minds are kind of trailing off. Oh yeah, I'll listen to you for a moment. Shoot, I need to do this thing. But when you're interviewing somebody for a movie or whatever you're interviewing them for, even for a job, right? Like a job interview, if you're hiring somebody, you're sitting there with that person for 30 or 40 minutes, if they're lucky. Maybe it's a 10 minutes and they're out the door situation. But for 30 or 40 minutes, and for the moment, you're just with that person. And if you're disconnected, then you're kind of losing at life because you're also disconnected from the time you're living. But, it's a daily struggle to find that positive spirit within us. But that is, I think, the human condition and something we all are dealing with. And that's the universality of being alive.